Drink water, folks. Hey guys, it's Cam, and yeah, just another video gonna chat about the planetary spheres. Um, Before I get started, I just want to say I'm gonna just start sharing, just talking, sharing what's on my mind. It's not super scripted or prepared. I just have a list of topics I want to chat about, make videos about. Yeah, so I can kind of start building up some digital content for you guys to watch here on my YouTube channel. So yeah, if you're enjoying this, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. And yeah, I hope you like it. So we're going to talk about the planetary spheres. And I did a presentation on the models of planetary spheres last year, where I put some research together about the development of the theoretical and scientific and spiritual, philosophical models of the planetary spheres over time, how it's changed and what's been consistent and what it's really all about. And I think where it starts is really our ancient models for the cosmos from Babylon, from Egypt. They all talk about this fixed layer of the sky where the gods live, and an infinity of divinity beyond that. Then from there's basically this development as we get into the later Egyptian period / Hellenistic era, where there's this Hermetic revelation about these 7 divine planetary spheres, their influence on our fate, and their own powers as divinities. And so this is where we get these early models from philosophers that begin to talk about the hierarchical cosmos, where we have Earth at the lowest central sphere, and then we have the moon, and then naturally in the sequence of the other planets in their decreasing speed, the next fastest planet after the moon is Mercury, then Venus, and then the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And so those are the 7 initial planetary spheres, to which were added many other models. For instance, some early scientists proposed that each sphere actually rotated by the mechanism of 4 subspheres. So we're actually looking at 7 times 4, and they grew in these numbers of, no, the cosmos has 58 spheres, or it has 39 and a half, or whatever they were, theorizing. But the general model is that we've got Earth, the 7 planetary spheres, and then we usually universally see the 8th sphere. The 8th sphere is referring to the firmament, the area of the fixed stars, the stars that don't wander, right, because the other visual planetary bodies wander. That's why they're called planets. Planetus is Greek for a wanderer. So we get this 8th sphere, which is in certain Hermetic texts, early Hermetic texts, also referred to as this infinite divine abode of magical infinite power. And then we also get these, as we get later into the Hermetic tradition, more texts relating to the decans, the 36 decans, which are said to reside above the 8th sphere or in some sub-level of the 8th, but it's higher than the other stars. There's one Hermetic text, a fragment, a Stobaean Hermetic fragment, where Hermes is saying, he's basically telling this initiate, imagine the whole circle of the zodiac, the whole cosmos as a circle, as a sphere. He says the decans sit beyond that, they determine everything in the course of our fate in the physical world. They said they're the most supreme layer. In other fragments, when we talk about Genesis, for example, in the Bible, it talks about the waters above the firmament, and then there became posited this crystalline sphere, or a 9th sphere that would be beyond the fixed stars, that is this infinite ocean of light that trickles into the firmament through the holes, which look to us like stars, but they're all made of the same oceanic starlight of God that's sitting beyond the 8th in the 9th. And that's where we get these other Hermetic discourses called specifically on the 8th and the 9th, which allude to these 2 more spheres beyond Saturn. And then we get eventually later on into the medieval period, we get the addition of a 10th sphere, which is called the primobile. And this is also a conception that's existed even earlier. Either the name of the first mover, the prime mobile, the first to move. This term isn't just isolated in these later traditions where it was pinned on as a 10th sphere. It did exist in our minds before that, but then it eventually became like seen as the 10th sphere, the prime mobile, which is essentially the daily rotation of our Earth plane. So from our perspective, it looks like the heavens are whirling every 24 hours. We can also understand from a scientific perspective that it's the rotation of our Earth. But to the ancients, this was also seen as an important mechanism of the cosmos. Dante talks all about this prime mover, this prime mobile, the highest layer that you touch before going into the empyrean infinity of the mind of God, where it is formless light that is just beyond measure and beyond comprehension. So with the ninth sphere as well as an intermediary between the firmament and the prime mobile, basically what we can infer is that this actually has to do with our precession, because the processional cycle that changes Earth's orientation and Earth's rotational axis that tilts us towards the seasons, our tilt moves along the stars. So our northern hemisphere is inclined in summertime at one point to the crab, and thousands of years later our northern hemisphere in the summer period, so when the Earth's tilt is inclined directly at the sun, which will happen at one point around our circle of orbiting the sun, it's directly inclined to it. That direction behind the sun will then maybe be the crab. But then Earth's, our axis tilt, thousands of years later we move to a different point around the sun, and then we point in the summertime in the north to a different constellation in the background. So that's this processional mechanism that's moving, and that was believed to be a part of the mechanism of the ninth sphere, the crystal sphere. And that the crystal sphere, this oceanic sphere, it's like this water that allows this slippage between the prime mobile and the eighth sphere of heaven in the firmament. So we can understand that basically with this 10-sphere model we're able to accurately give a model. It's a model. It's a representative way to look at and give a theoretical or philosophical application to two other really important means of the cosmos's movement and action around us. So of course we have the measurement of secondary motion, which is the planetary movement in front of the fixed stars, but we also have what's called primary motion, which is the rotation of the prime mobile, or the 10th sphere, in the hours, throughout the day. But we also have what I just jokingly / kind of legitimately proposed to call like tertiary motion, which is the processional motion. I think it's reasonable to call it that just because it is the third major motion of these greater cycles that we can track. So in that sense, these spheres account for that. Now, there are other long-term cycles, for instance, the obliquity cycle of our pole. So we have the precession, which is like the rotation of the pole, but there's also on its own just an inclination that as we look at the sun and Earth's orientation, that just tilts us and our pole closer and further from the sun. In addition to the rotation, it's kind of like a spiral. You can think of it, if anything, like a spiral, because it'll be rotating, but sometimes it'll be a thinner rotation and sometimes it'll be a wider and a more tilted at the sun kind of rotation. And that has like a 41 or 42,000 year cycle of inclining. And again, that's affecting our tilt to the sun from our equator, which that difference between our equator and our tilt to the sun in the plane of the solar system, which is the ecliptic, that's called the obliquity of the ecliptic. And so that value changes, which changes the values of the tropical points or the solstices, the solstitial points, or the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, so those latitudes are going to go up and down, basically is what's happening in that motion. So, maybe we could add an 11th sphere for that, or whatever. It's like, it doesn't really matter, right? These are all just models for us to talk about and put into one way where we can kind of understand the cosmos. So, these are some of my thoughts on the planetary spheres. I hope you enjoyed it. Ciao. Simple and easy.